I found an FBI lab report dated November 23rd, which is the next day, of course, on Saturday. All the evidence that was taken by the Dallas Police Department on the 6th floor of the book depository was delivered to the FBI lab in Washington, D.C. at midnight that night. The test will run the next morning. The report was written the next day, and the evidence was returned, which happened to be the rifle. Well, strangely enough, and I'll read it for you, no latent prints of value were developed on Oswald's revolver, the cartridge cases, the unfired cartridge, the clip of the rifle, or the inner parts of the rifle. The latent prints appearing in the photograph taken of the rifle K1 by the Dallas Police Department are too fragmentary and indistinct to be of any value for identification purposes. In other words, George, they didn't find one print of Lee Harvey Oswald on that rifle. On Monday, they have a print. But you have to understand that that rifle returned to Dallas on Saturday night. And, Jim, I think you talked to him. I did. Why don't you tell him what the director of Miller Funeral Home says?
Right. The then director at Miller Funeral Home that was handling funeral arrangements for Oswald, well, I talked to him, but that was only after I read news accounts in one of the Fort Worth papers that said an FBI team with a crime lab kit spent a long time in the morgue. So I asked Mr. Paul Grudy about this, and he said, oh, yes. He said, I said, were you there when the FBI put Oswald's hand on the rifle? And he said, yes. He said, we had a heck of a time getting the fingerprint ink off of his dead hand in time for the burial.
Oh, my God.
Now, George, I never believed that statement until I read this FBI lab report.